Ichimon Japan is made possible by Patreon support. If you would like to make sure that we can keep bringing you more content like this, then head on over to japankyo.com/Patreon and sign up for as little as $1 a month.
See, my theory is that Japan is a nation that loves like paperwork and bureaucracy. So the spirit of Colonel Sanders like had to spend time like registering his curse before it could go into effect, and it took a couple months.
Yeah, he had to get the proper stamp.
Yeah, it was this whole big thing.
Welcome to Ichimon Japan. I'm Tony and
I'm Ryan.
All right, so today is a kind of it's going to probably turn out to be a slightly mini episode, somewhat different from the usual stuff that we do, but I will start with the usual thing and introduce the question, and then we'll explain what all this mini stuff is. So, Ichimon means one question, and one question is what we ask at the beginning of every episode. We ask one question about Japan, and today's question is, who got it more wrong, MatPat or Tony? So,
I'd like to point out I'm not in that bracket because I never got anything wrong.
You did not. You did not. Yes, you are totally exempt from this. And this is me confessing to you and complaining about something that I guess maybe MatPat got wrong, but we'll discuss. Okay, for anybody that's not aware who MatPat is, you might be confused, but I will explain that in a moment. First, let's explain what this is all about. So, all the way back in episode 11 of the podcast, so that is, I think, 21 episodes ago, all the way back in April of 2020, we covered what is the curse of the Colonel. And if you haven't listened to that episode, I will explain briefly, so just so you know what we're talking about, but there is plenty more content in that episode that we're not going to touch on, so it's still worth listening to. So the Curse of the Colonel, in very simple terms, is a baseball curse that is said to have come upon the Hanshin Tigers, the Osaka baseball team of the Hanshin Tigers in 1985. So the fans were celebrating an important victory of the team, and then they threw a statue of the Colonel Sanders that they found at a Kentucky Fried Chicken into Dotonbori River in Osaka. And then the curse says that they basically did really, really bad in the years following that event, and so that got dubbed the Curse of the Colonel, and they haven't won a Japan Series championship, basically the equivalent of the World Series, ever since then. Okay, so that is just a super, super simple version. Now, I got two things wrong, kind of, but the main thing that I got wrong in that episode is that I said that the statue was thrown into the river after they won the Japan Series. That is not true. So in 1985...
How dare you lie to our audience?
Well, I look, we might get things wrong every once in a while. I do my absolute best to get everything right or to attribute it correctly to, whoever. If I'm not sure about something, I explain or I attribute it to whoever, right? But, we're human. We get things wrong, and I'm totally fine with admitting to that. And so I said that they threw the statue into the river after they won the Japan Series. That is not true. They actually threw the statue into the river after they won the Central League Championship. So baseball in Japan is divided into two leagues, the Pacific League, the Central League. And when you win a league, then you move on to a tournament that leads to the Japan Series. And so, teams from each league compete to win the league, and then they move on to have the opportunity to win the Japan Series, the top championship. And so the Hanshin Tigers won the Central League, and the fans went crazy because it had been a long time since, they had won it. And so that's when they threw the statue into the river. Now, it's a relatively small thing, but it's something I got wrong. And so I want to make that absolutely clear. I got it wrong. Done. Now, the interesting part here starts to emerge from how I found out about this. All right. So, Ryan, are you familiar with MatPat?
Yes. He is a YouTuber who makes various videos through multiple series now, kind of doing a similar thing to us of investigating certain claims or beliefs about things. So I believe it began with game theory.
Yeah.
Where he would look up theories about video games and try to prove or disprove them. Then it became film theory, and more recently, food theory.
Yeah. He gets really, a lot of times he'll really dig into science and physics and chemistry. I would say far more than what we've done on this show. He gets just, like really scientific at times.
But how much has he investigated Japanese curse casting?
Well, this may be the first time. I'm not sure.
I just realized this is actually our second Japanese curse episode.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. So, we did the Ushi no Kokumaeri, the curse of the ox, the hour of the ox. And this is the third
episode
in this. Yeah, in the curses, Japanese curses.
I say we just focus all on curses from here out and make that our niche.
We'll just call the show Noroi Japan. Curse Japan.
Norowaretana Japan.
Well, I doubt this is the last time we'll be talking about some Japanese curse.
Norowareta Nippon.
Norowareta Nippon, exactly. Cursed Japan, yeah. Anyway, so recently, in late 2020, I believe, a couple months ago, he started, like you said, this new channel called Food Theory, and he does content related to food in some tangential way or in some like directly related to food. And recently, in my YouTube recommended video section, one of his videos popped up, and it was about the curse of the kernel. And being that we did an episode about this, I was curious to get MatPat's perspective on this. So I watched the video. And that's when I found out that I might have gotten something wrong. So that led me to re-listen to the episode, and I realized, oh shoot, I said Japan series instead of the fact that they won the Central League and then they threw the statue into the river. So MatPat caught a lot of people with that mistake. Apparently that is widespread in the English language content that focuses on this whole curse of the kernel. My defense is that I did look at the Japanese content that does not get this wrong. And I don't know, maybe I just got confused with the English content, or maybe it's my ignorance of baseball that just allowed this little thing to slip by. But anyway, it happens.
By the way, what is a baseball?
It's this thing that sometimes hits people in the head and it hurts really bad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so MatPat points this out. He says specifically that according to Japanese sources, he explains that the date is different when, the English languages sources say that it was after the Japan series. And so great job. MatPat, he's very thorough. Good job. And so I thought, okay, I need to correct this. But is this enough for an entire episode? At first I thought no, but as I'm watching and I'm thinking about what he's saying, I realized that he mentioned something that I don't agree with. And so I thought, okay, we can do an episode about this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert an audio clip right here of what he says, and then we will explain after it.
So a single detail in the story got lost in translation, and the curse of the kernel spun out into a fully blown urban legend as a result. Theorists, this totally wrecks the curse of the kernel as we know it. If the kernel indeed cursed the Tigers from beyond the grave, it didn't work, because the 1985 Tigers went ahead and won a title anyway just a couple of weeks after he was tossed into the river.
So MatPat proposes that because they did win the Japan series immediately after throwing the statue into the river, like 3 weeks after that, then there's no curse. It basically resolved itself. It canceled itself out. And so the curse of the kernel is not actually a thing. One other thing that he mentions that I don't particularly agree with is that he seems to imply that this translation error that seems to have occurred when English language sources were reporting on this, with this discrepancy in the date, led to this becoming a full-blown urban legend. And the implication for me is that this is a thing that happened in English only, and that it is not an urban legend in Japanese. It is an urban legend in Japanese.
Yeah, I first learned about it from Japanese people while living in Japan.
Yeah. This was a thing in Japan long before it got translated into English. And so I totally do not agree with that implication. I won't say that he's totally claiming this, but it certainly seems that at the very least he's implying it. And I'll explain a bit more about that in a bit. But let's go back to the date thing. So as he points out, the English language media basically, all latched onto the fact that they threw the statue into the river after the Japan series. We've established that's wrong. But when you look into the Japanese language sources, there's no problem or paradox or anything there that says the curse cancels itself out, because the language they use makes it clear, and it's a bit different from what MatPat presents, be it the mistaken interpretation or the correct interpretation that he also presents. So they explain that the curse occurred or started the following year. They use the word yokunen or yokutoshi, which literally means the following year, which means in 86. So the statue was thrown in 85. In November, they win the Japan series. The curse starts in 86. So it does not cancel itself out according to Japanese people that state this, that explain this curse. Okay. So that, in my opinion, is wrong.
You had to wait for the season to refresh to kick in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, really, it's I guess an example of real world retconning, in that the next few years were not good for the Hanshin Tigers. They ended up losing a couple of their star players. As we discussed in episode 11, a top executive ended up committing suicide. So aside from their losing streak, all of a sudden fans were wondering, why are we losing? Oh yeah, we threw that statue into the river. Maybe that's why. So...
See, my theory is that Japan is a nation that loves paperwork and bureaucracy. So the spirit of Colonel Sanders had to spend time registering his curse before it could go into effect, and it took a couple months.
Yeah, he had to get the proper stamp.
Yeah, it was this whole big thing. He had to go to multiple offices to get hankos done, and it's really hard to do that when you're a ghost.
Yeah.
Also, he's a foreign ghost, so they'd see his hanko and not even believe it.
Yes. Exactly. There was probably some language difficulty too. So anyway, yeah, it took a few weeks to process, and then the curse kicked off in 86. Let's just say that. And although they don't go into as much detail as Ryan just did, that's how the Japanese sources explain it. So also, a lot of the Japanese sources explain that it's not simply a matter of the Hanshin Tigers not being able to win a Japan series. It was also that streak of bad luck that I just mentioned, losing their star players and the suicide, and just overall not even being able to get to the win the Central League, which is not the Japan series, right? So it was just, they were just doing really, really bad. So that is, it's bigger than just being able to take the top position in the baseball league. So I don't agree with MatPat's kind of proposal there. And then going back to the thing about being that this was a thing blown out of proportion in the English language side of things. Well, this was, as far as I can tell, according to a couple sources that I found, this was already a thing as early as 1988 in Japan. People were already saying this. So in 1988, according to these two sources, one, the Japanese Wikipedia entry, another one, a video that was talking about this in Japanese, they explained that there was a very popular variety show in Japan called Tante Naito Scoop. And their first episode apparently was, or I don't know if it was the entire episode or only part of it, focused on the curse of the Colonel. And according to this one article, no, it was a video that I was watching. This was because viewers actually sent in submissions for them to cover the curse of the Colonel. So they did a story about it, which tells me that this was already in the zeitgeist, so to speak. People already were talking about this and they wanted the TV show to cover it. And then the TV show covered it and it just, blew up even more. So there you go. In the 80s in Japan, only a few years after the statue was thrown into the river, people were already calling this, a curse. And in Japanese, it's called the Kaner Sandas no Noroi. Noroi, again, means curse. So this is totally a thing in Japan. People call it a Noroi, a curse. And there's just, this was not a thing invented in the English language media. Okay, so MatPat, I don't think he got that part accurately, so to speak. But the ultimate conclusion of his video I thought was pretty funny. And I enjoyed it, and I basically agree with it in that he proposes that the throwing of the statue into the river was actually good luck because, as we discovered, the statue was thrown after the Central League victory, but before the Japan Series victory. So he proposes that by throwing the statue into the river, they got good luck and won the national championship. So, Ryan, what do you think? Do you like that theory?
Well, obviously, yeah. I mean, the reason they had problem the following years is because they weren't throwing a statue in the river every single game.
Exactly.
You get like a little short luck boom for like maybe a week, so...
Yeah. I think it's like 1 month or 3 weeks, something like that. Yeah.
It's something like that, but, not a full season.
Yeah, because remember, in 86, things went south really quickly. So, yeah, it was only about 3-4 weeks of good luck. But, I mean, that means that every single year they're going to have to throw a statue into the river.
I think it's before every single game.
That is, I think... A regular season is something like 140 games.
We're going to need a lot of Colonel Sanders statues.
Yeah. So MatPat encourages people to try this out because we don't have enough data points to, prove this. But he also says, please do it in a way that is not illegal and will not end up in people suing him. So I agree. And I encourage his proposals.
Oh, yeah. As the only one who actually lives in Japan, I also do not support the idea of vandalizing these statues and throwing them in the river.
Yeah.
Please do not do that. They're also bolted down now.
Yeah. We learned in episode 11 that, I guess due to concerns of people throwing these statues in the river, they had to bolt them down. Yeah. So it's much tougher to do. I guess you could make a balloon Colonel Sanders, like an inflatable Colonel Sanders, throw it in and then retrieve it, So it's I don't know if that'll work because it's not the real thing, but...
Yeah, honestly, I haven't been to Dotonbori recently, but the closest KFC I know to it's not that close.
Yeah, I remember reading when we were doing the research for that episode that the original one was not there anymore. And
okay,
so
yeah.
the original one being the one in 1985. So probably, yeah, I think it's farther away. I from my recollection, which is like 8 or 9 years old probably, I don't remember seeing a KFC in that area, like in that immediate area.
Yeah, the closest one I can think of is probably like a 10-minute walk away, which is like doable, but
Yeah.
It would be very suspicious to see a crowd of people just walking down the street for a ways carrying a statue.
You need to dress up like a KFC employee. So I mean, who got it more wrong? I don't know. I'll just say me, just to be humble, I guess. But
I'll say MatPat for balancing.
There you go. Okay, so it's a tie. We will declare a tie between Ichimon Japan and Food Theory MatPat. It is a fun video, though. It's very thorough. As I said, MatPat always does like extensive amounts of research, and he does a great job. So I will include a link for that video in the show notes so you can check it out.
I have a theory he's going to make a response video to this, and as part of his research, he's going to become like super fluent in Japanese.
Well, that would be fun, being that
and like
video
do personal interviews with the staff of the KFC from 1985.
That would be impressive. That would be really, really impressive. And well, being that he gets millions of views per video, I certainly wouldn't mind being mentioned in one of his videos. But hey, I do want to mention one last thing that I got kind of wrong, or I guess I could say I got wrong in that episode. In passing, very briefly, I mentioned that this custom of jumping into the Dotonbori River is something that was started by a rakugo performer whose name I believe is Katsura Fukuwaka. But anyway, that is not correct. That comes from an article that I did not read thoroughly, and I managed to find it again when I was checking this. I didn't read it thoroughly, and so I misinterpreted something that was written there. But he did jump into the Dotonbori River in 1985 when he was a first-year high school student, and he ended up getting expulsed from school, and then that led him to become a rakugo performer.
Is it expulsed and not expelled?
Thank you. Yes, that's yeah.
That's so 4 errors now. MatPat definitely did a better job than you.
Fine. Yes, this whole Curse of the Colonel thing, it's not good Not good, not good. You can't talk about it without getting stuff wrong. So he got expelled, and that led him to become a rakugo performer. And that was a totally different story that was not directly related to the Curse of the Colonel. However, he did jump into the river in 1985 after the Hanshin Tigers won the Japan series. And that was due to a bet with, I guess, a friend that he said the Hanshin Tigers would never win the Japan series. And so he had to jump in the river.
What a bet to make, because I mean, you have like your whole lifetime for them to eventually win.
I'm not sure. Maybe he might have just said it was this year they will not win.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. The article was not clear on that side of things. But the funny thing about the article is that, or the story is that this rakugo performer, or in 1985, he was a future rakugo performer. He was actually a Yomiuri Giants fan. And so that's why he made that bet with his friend that
in
Hanshin Tigers would win.
In case our viewers don't know or have forgotten, the Giants are like the biggest rivals to the Tigers.
Exactly. Yeah. And they are kind of like the most successful team, like kind of like the Yankees or something like that. But that is basically it. Hopefully this wasn't too convoluted, but again, episode 11 still has plenty more content related to this, and I will be inserting a little correction in that one too, just to make sure that people listening to that episode for the first time actually get the accurate information. But as I said, I'm sure I do my absolute best not to have any mistakes in the shows. I do way more research than perhaps I even have to, but
I can verify that is true, because he sends me his notes, and sometimes they're like 30 pages long, and we end up using about 8 of them.
Yeah. And part of the reason why I do that is because I know Ryan sometimes asks follow-up questions, and I want to have the answers.
What was
to
the one
questions.
recently? You sent like a huge one recently, and we used almost none of it.
Yeah. Well, sneak peek here, but that one was for our Kaguya Hime episode that will be out in maybe 2 or 3 months from now. So I did a lot of research for that one.
And this was not a script. This was just research notes.
Yes. I wrote a lot, and I included a lot of links, and far more than I expect Ryan to look into. That is totally fine, because I like I said, I do way more than I really have to, but because I really want to make sure that I'm bringing accurate information. But as I said, again, we are human, we make mistakes. So if you happen to come across a mistake that I made, please you send me an email to ichimon@japankyo.com. I want to know when I make a mistake, and because I don't want to convey incorrect information. Again, ichimon@japankyo.com. We will be back sooner than usual with a full-length proper episode. I will release consider this a bonus episode, because this isn't a full-length episode, but I'll be releasing the next one will be all about annoying things in Japan, part 1. So it's a good one. Come back for that. It's not just 2 old men complaining. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you to MatPat for the correction, and see you next time.
See you next time.